We've been hearing a great deal about the PS5 and the next generation of consoles lately, and even though we know that there is still a while before it arrives, and even though there's still so much to look forward to with the current crop of consoles, none of us can contain our excitement. There's a lot to think about: what hardware innovations we'll get to see, what new experiences new hardware will enable, and most importantly, what games we'll be playing throughout the PS5's life cycle of 6 or 7 years, or however long it sticks around. New franchises and fresh IP are always exciting, but in many cases, sequels can be just as exciting, especially if they have a strong foundation to work off of, or at least one that holds a lot of potential. In this feature, we'll be taking a look at 15 sequels we're hoping to see on the PS5. Some of these you'll notice are almost sure shots, and even though they haven't been formally announced, they're pretty much guaranteed to be coming out at some point. Others, well, not so much. Either way, without further ado, let's jump right in. Uncharted 5. The lovable Nathan Drake hung up his boots and bid us farewell with Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, but as the Lost Legacy showed us so well, Uncharted can exist even in his absence. In fact, not only can it exist, it can thrive. Chloe and Nadine have proven themselves to be formidable leading ladies, while others like Sam and Sully have special places in the hearts of series fans as well. There's certainly a lot of possible directions Sony could take with a new Uncharted game, and given how successful the series always manages to be both critically and commercially, they'd be insane to let it rest too long. We know for a fact that Sony has set up a new studio in San Diego on an unannounced AAA third-person action-adventure title that is being described as the next chapter of cinematic storytelling, which, as you might have guessed, speculation has pegged as the next Uncharted game, so let's keep our fingers crossed. Gran Turismo 7. Gran Turismo Sport is a much better game now than it was when it first launched. With post-launch support and numerous updates, Polyphony Digital has certainly addressed a lot of the issues that plagued the game back in 2017. But still, it's not Gran Turismo 7. It's weird that in the 6 years that the PS4 has been on the market so far, it hasn't seen the launch of Gran Turismo 7. It's unprecedented for such a thing to happen. A new Gran Turismo title on the PS5, be it 7 or whatever else they choose to call it, is pretty much guaranteed. We just hope it goes back to the series' roots, because at its best, Gran Turismo was untouchable. Horizon Zero Dawn 2. There's absolutely no way Horizon Zero Dawn won't receive a sequel on the PS5. Guerrilla's new action RPG launched on the PS4 in 2017 and took the industry by storm, wowing one and all with its beautiful world, thrilling combat, and wonderfully engaging story. It received rave reviews and has crossed 10 million units in sales, so yeah, a sequel is pretty much guaranteed. Zero Dawn 2 being a launch title for the PS5 might be a bit too optimistic, but a 2021 release date doesn't seem too unlikely. God of War 2. God of War's future was questionable at best until very recently, with the franchise floundering and stumbling with what the masses deemed to be an unwillingness to grow and change. 2018's God of War was an emphatic response to those complaints, and the series' future is now as secure as it was insecure not too long ago. God of War 2, or God of War 5, is inevitable, and we can't wait to see where it takes Kratos and Atreus next. Spider-Man 2. Insomniac Games really knocked the ball out of the park with 2018's Spider-Man. Though the studio has always been successful and developed a great many excellent games, Spider-Man is without a doubt their biggest hit ever. It was well received across the board, and its sales were about as high as you'd expect the sales for a well-made, well-marketed game based on one of the world's biggest media properties. There is no question about whether there will be a sequel. The only question is when the sequel will arrive. Let's hope it's not too far off. The Last of Us Part 3. We know, The Last of Us Part 2 isn't even out yet, and we're already talking about a third one? But we'd be fools not to mention Naughty Dog's venerated series in a feature such as this one. Success is pretty much guaranteed for The Last of Us Part 2 no matter how well it's received or isn't, and by that same token, so is a sequel. And sure, that sequel will probably be a long ways off, many years in fact. If we look at the pattern of this series, there probably won't be a third game until the PS5 is close to the end of its life. But who knows, if the next Uncharted game is indeed being developed by another studio and Naughty Dog won't have to do it, maybe The Last of Us could be their primary focus, unless they decide to make a new IP, which is cool too, of course. Days Gone 2. Days Gone is a bit of a blip for Sony Worldwide Studios and their excellent track record this generation, especially over the last 3 or 4 years. But even though it's far from a perfect game, there's still a lot to like here. Most importantly, however, in spite of all these issues, Days Gone is clearly a game that has a ton of potential. With a little more time and maybe if the relatively smaller Bend Studios had a little more manpower and resources, Days Gone could be something truly special. Since its launch, in spite of the mixed reviews, the game's been selling very well across the globe, so here's hoping Sony greenlights a sequel and pumps more cash and resources into its development, and most importantly, allows it more time to cook. Bloodborne 2. How ridiculous is it that after all of this time we still don't have a Bloodborne 2? We haven't even heard a peep about it. Bloodborne is arguably the greatest game From Software has ever made, a behemoth even among the lineup of giants that studio has created, and yet our calls for a sequel have remained unanswered. There's no telling if Sony and From Software will actually collaborate again to make another Bloodborne game, but regardless, we'll keep on hoping that it ends up happening one day, hopefully not too long from now. Killzone sequel. Killzone was one of Sony's most successful franchises in the PS3 era, but this generation saw a reversal in that franchise's fortunes. Killzone Shadowfall tried to take the series into a new direction and was met with a generally lukewarm reception. And even though it sold pretty well, there's been very little indication that we'll get a sequel anytime soon, especially when you consider how successful Guerrilla Games' new venture, Horizon Zero Dawn, turned out to be. Regardless, the studio recently expanded greatly with the intention of being able to work on multiple AAA projects at the same time, while recent hirings by the studio seem to suggest that a new Killzone game might be in the pipeline, so all hope is not lost just yet. Bully 2. It's been almost 13 years since Rockstar's Bully first came out, and though we've seen little of the franchise, if it can even be called a franchise beyond multiple re-releases, the game's strong, dedicated fan base keeps hope for a sequel alive. Speculation and rumors about a Bully 2 are a dime a dozen, as they have always been, and it's not hard to be skeptical about any of them. For now, there's no way of knowing whether a Bully 2 is even in the works at Rockstar, but we're hoping our wishes will soon become a reality. What Rockstar definitely is working on, however, is Grand Theft Auto 6. There's about as much chance of there being no Grand Theft Auto 6 as there is of Anthem becoming a can't-miss experience by this time next week. Absolutely zilch. To call GTA 5 a moneymaker would be the understatement of the century. The game has sold over 100 million units so far and shows no signs of stopping. So of course, Take-Two Interactive and Rockstar are hard at work on a sequel. In fact, a recent resume of a former Rockstar employee mentioned GTA 6 by name. So we know for a fact that it has been in development for a while. Let's just hope we don't have to wait too long for it. Red Dead Redemption 3. With Red Dead Redemption 2 only having come out a few months ago and Rockstar hard at work on GTA 6, it's going to be a while before we see the Red Dead franchise again. But one look at the incredible success Red Dead Redemption 2 has achieved, both critically and commercially, is enough to tell you that there definitely will be a Red Dead Redemption 3. Given how long Rockstar now takes to make its games, we can safely assume that the hypothetical but not really hypothetical sequel won't be out for a few years. We can only hope that we get to see it on the PS5 and the next Xbox, presumably, and don't have to wait until the 10th console generation to get our hands on it. Persona 6. Persona has always been a beloved and well-respected franchise, but with Persona 5, it finally broke into the mainstream, seeing commercial success and popularity levels to match the critical reception these games always enjoy. At this point, it's hard to imagine Atlus just leaving the franchise be. Persona 5 Royal is up next, but we can also expect a few more Persona 5 spin-offs before Atlus decides to move on. But there shouldn't be any doubt in anyone's mind that Persona 6 will happen eventually. Given the fact that some of the leading Persona developers have moved on from the franchise and/or are working on Atlus's new fantasy RPG currently titled Re-Fantasy, we can expect the series to change notably whenever it does come back with a 6th entry, but we still cannot wait to see where it goes next. Mass Effect sequel. Mass Effect Andromeda was a solid enough game, especially now with post-launch patches having ironed out many of its technical issues, but solid enough is far from the level of quality one expects from this franchise. The game at launch underperformed by every metric, leading EA to put the series on ice. But things have clearly changed. BioWare have mentioned on more than one occasion that they are not yet done with Mass Effect, and that a sequel is something they will most likely work on. Given the turmoil the studio has been going through, it's hard to say anything with absolute certainty, even whether the game, if it does exist, will be any good. But we're hoping for the best, and that this is the game BioWare moves on to after they're done working on Dragon Age 4. Sure, it'll be a while, but if a long wait leads to a much-needed return to form for the series, man, we'll gladly wait. The Witcher 4. Geralt of Rivia's story has been brought to a close, and in an incredibly satisfying manner. But while it's doubtful that we will be playing as the White Wolf again, that doesn't mean CD Projekt Red won't ever be coming back to The Witcher. The studio has spoken in the past about possibly returning to The Witcher one day, and sure, they may not call it The Witcher 4, but really, if it's a proper new Witcher game, they can call it whatever they want. We'll still be in. For now, the studio's focus remains entirely on Cyberpunk 2077, which looks incredible by the way, but we're hoping in a couple years' time, CD Projekt Red will be taking us back to the continent again. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.